Hi everyone, Becca here and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sewing up Brielle from Sustainable Cloth Company, and if you have been following my channel for a while, you know I've done a couple tutorials on Brielle, and Brielle is just a very jam-packed pattern, I guess is the best way to put it, which is awesome. There's all kinds of different options and styles, and it's pretty much a all-in-one pattern almost. But it can be really confusing and kind of overbearing if you are new to sewing, new to patterns, or just kind of get overwhelmed by a lot of information in one area. So I do have a tutorial for the crossback strap dress, as well as a crop top with the halter that I did make it reversible actually. But today I'm going to be sewing up I'm going to be doing another dress, but I am doing the sleeved version with the gathered sleeves, and then that wrist is cuffed. So I'll be going over these steps. The steps will be the same whether you're doing the short sleeve, long sleeve, or the gathered sleeve. And I'll talk about in the video, just really the only difference is hemming it as opposed to gathering it and adding the cuff. So if you were trying to do any type of sleeved Brielle dress or top, this video will be very helpful for you. So let's get started. Alright, so whether this is your first Brielle of any type or you've done some in different styles, the one thing we all know about Brielle is that there are tons and tons of options, which means there are multiple cut lines, there's multiple pieces, and that can be a little bit overwhelming. So the first thing I'm going to do is just walk you through the pattern pieces that we need. So for right now, I have the bodices in the sleeves. So I am doing the gathered bishop sleeve. So I have this sleeve piece here. I cut those out, and then really the only thing that you need for this one, I said I'm doing the sleeves version of a dress. So the first thing we need the front bodice or bodysuit lining skirted bodice, which is a dress. The front, and then we also need the back piece. And so then you're going to come over here, and I do have two sizes printed out on here, so that's why there's this extra line. But you're going to look here at the neckline cut lines, and there's the straps, which are the dotted lines, and then there's the sleeved, which is the straight lines. So you can see here, this is the straight lines, so that is the line we are going to be cutting on both pieces because we are attaching sleeves. That's the same thing for long sleeves or short sleeves. And then, so that takes care of the top, and then we're going to look at the waist cut lines, and you have the upper back skirted bodysuit or attached to skirt, so that's if you're doing a dress or peplum. And then the straight line at the bottom, which you can't really see on that one, it's cut off down here, is the crop top. So for this one, since we are attaching a skirt, we are going to use this dotted line, so you can just fold it, or if you're using a projector, you can cut it onto there. And I do cut these out on my projector, but for these videos, I like to have the pattern pieces to be able to show you a little more in depth. So in order to make this dress, you're going to need a main and lining of your back bodice cut on the fold. So you'll have two pieces of this pattern piece. You'll need the main and lining of your front bodice cut on the fold. So you'll have two pieces of these. You will need two sleeves. You will also need two cuffs because we're doing the gathered sleeve. I believe the regular sleeve doesn't use a cuff, it's just hemmed. Or if you're doing short sleeves, you don't need the cuff as well. And then I don't have the skirt piece put out, so I'm going to pull it up on my computer real quick. So for the skirt, I am doing the full circle skirt. As you can see here, this is, you cut it as two pieces, you cut it on the fold, so you have two half circles. And there are lines for the top length, the tunic length, and the knee length, so you can kind of just look there at which length you want. And I am doing the full length, so I cut mine out on this solid line here, and those are the pieces that you need to make the sleeved Brielle. All right, so I have all my pieces laid out here. Here are my cuffs, and I'm using for the main fabric this really dark purple velvet. It kind of comes across darker in some places, but just to give you an idea, for my sleeves I am using this mesh here. My lining, I am using just a black double brush poly. Again, my bodice is this purple, and then these are my skirt pieces. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set everything aside besides our bodice pieces. And I'm going to start with my main fabric. And because I am using different fabrics for the bodice and lining, it's a little bit easier to tell which is which. But these should be exactly the same, and you can use the same fabric or you can use different fabric for your main and lining. You just want to make sure the stretch is similar or the same. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to line up our main shoulder seams here and pin those, and then we're going to also do the same thing while we're at it on our lining pieces, making sure we have right sides together, and it's kind of hard to tell on this, so okay, right sides together, and we're going to just, like I said, line up those shoulder seams, and then once you have them lined up and pinned, we will go and sew all of those shoulder seams together. So you'll just sew across all 4 shoulder seams. Once those shoulder seams are sewn, you'll see they will look like this. And all we're going to do is we're going to open up our bodice here. This is my main. It doesn't really matter which one you do. Then I'm going to take my lining and match up the fronts and the backs with right sides together. And we're going to start here by matching up these shoulder seams around the inside neckline here and pinning those into place. And then we will just continue matching our raw edges all the way around the neckline. Just match those up, and then once you have them all pinned in place, we will take this over to our machine, and we're going to sew all the way around this entire neck hole. You can see there, so just go and sew all the way around that full circle. Once we have that neckline sewn up, you can see here it's all sewn, and what you're going to do is you're just going to take your lining and kind of bunch it up and put it through your neck hole, so you can see it turns around. So now you have wrong sides together of your main and your lining, and just kind of lay it flat. You can give your neckline a good press if you would like. You could also understitch it as well, stitching the seam down to your lining to make it stay in place a little bit better. But what we're going to do next is now we're going to move on to the sleeves. So what we're going to do is we're going to just work one side at a time. And we're going to make sure our raw edges of our arm side of our main and lining are lined up as well as we can. And then we're going to take a sleeve, and I just like to fold it in half and match it up and find my center point here, and that's what I match to this shoulder seam with right sides together, and pin that into place. And then you will just kind of work your way down, keeping all 3 layers lined up, and you're just going to kind of ease your sleeve into place. And you can, if you are worried about keeping your main and lining lined up, you could baste those together. There's nothing wrong with that. It does make it a little bit easier, just adds an extra step. And so you're just gonna ease that in all the way around, and then once you have that pinned or clipped in, you will just sew up this arm side, and then repeat the same steps on your other sleeve. And this is a little bit trickier because this doesn't really have as much stretch as the other fabric, but you just want to ease it in and get it lined up and then stitch that down. And like I said, then repeat those same steps on your other arm side with your other sleeve. So once your sleeves are sewn on, it's going to look like this, and this is all going to be the same whether you're doing short sleeves, the gathered sleeves, or the regular long sleeves. This will all be looking the same here. What we're going to do next is we are just going to fold all of this in half. I'm going to start down here at the wrist, and I'm short on clips, so I'm just going to do a couple here, and we're going to clip all the way along from the wrist to the armpit, matching up those seams there. And then down the sides, we're going to match up all of these raw edges and the bottom raw edge. So down here you will have 4 layers pinned together, and then you're just going to, see, I missed that one, get it in there. I'm going to sew up the waistline, pivoting, and then going all the way down to the wrist, and then we will do the same on the other side. And again, this is the same no matter what style of sleeve you are using. Once you have those side seams sewed up, your bodice is almost done. Mine is inside out, as you can see here, and I'm going to leave it that way until we add the cuffs. So we're going to set our bodice aside for now. We're going to take out our cuffs. The cuffs are only if you're doing the gathered sleeves. If you're doing short sleeves or the basic long sleeves, at this point you would just fold up your raw edge and hem, and then your bodice would be done. But if you were doing the cuffs, we're going to take our 2 cuffs and we're going to fold them in half along the grain line. So my grain line is going this way here, and we are just going to take these and sew along this long edge here on both cuffs. Once you have your cuffs sewn up, you can see it's going to look like this. And right now I'm just going to take it and fold it in half, wrong sides together, matching up that side seam there, clipping it, and then again just folding it out on the other side, matching up my raw edge. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to set my cuff here. I'm going to take my sleeve, and I'm going to go and I'm going to trim off some extra strings here, and I am going to put a gathering stitch along my entire wrist of my sleeve. So I'm going to go all the way around and put in a gathering stitch of your choice. I'm just going to use a basic gathering stitch. I'm going to do it on my serger, but you can use 1 or 2 rows of straight stitches or however you prefer gathering. Alright, so I went ahead and did my gathering stitch on my serger, and since I used my serger, it did gather it a little bit by itself. But what we want to do is we want our sleeve, the wrist of our sleeve, to be about the same size, maybe a little bit bigger than our cuff. So then you're going to just gather it until you shrink it down to about that size. So I need to gather mine a little bit more to get it to fit. Just even it out and pull. So it's still a little big, but if it's bigger than your cuff, you can stretch your cuff out a little bit to kind of finish the gathering and make it fit. So it's not a big deal. So I'm about, it's pretty good for me right there. So I'm going to take my cuff, and with right sides together, I'm going to slide my cuff in at the wrist, lining up my side seam and my raw edges here. And then I'm going to find my half points and clip it in, and then I'm just going to go and sew all the way around that. Again, if needed, you can slightly stretch your cuff to make it fit, and then we will obviously take our other cuff and do the same thing on the other sleeve, gather it, and then put the cuff in and sew it on. All right, so once you have your cuffs sewn on, you can turn everything right side out, and your bodice is done. Look how cute that looks. And then you can, if you need to, well, you should, if you need to, remove any gathering stitches that can be seen in your wrist. So now we're going to set aside our bodice, and we're going to take our skirt pieces, and we're just going to open them up. And these are kind of big, so they're hard to see. And just for reference, this is a size, the extra small, or the size 6, I believe is what it is. I have some extra fabric up here. Not that it matters. You're gonna lay out your skirt piece. I'll just kind of show you on half so that you can see better. And we're just going to put them right sides together, lining up our straight edge up here at the top, and we are going to pin this together all the way across here, and then you can kind of just slide it over and do the same thing on the other side. And this will be the same no matter what skirt length you are doing. And even if you're doing the, I believe it's the half circle skirt, these steps will be the same. Your pieces will just be more like this shaped instead of a full circle, or half of a circle, I guess. But you will just match up the side seams and sew those up no matter which circle skirt you are doing. All right, so once you sew up these side seams of your skirt, you should be able to open it up and have your full skirt done. I also went ahead and finished my raw edges while I'm at it, because the next step I'm going to do is hem my skirt. I like to hem, if I'm not really worried about the length of it, before I complete the garment. It just is less weight to deal with and it's easier to handle. And so like this one's for my daughter, I know it will be a good length, a good enough length, and so I'm just going to go ahead and hem the skirt. So what I like to do is I like to put a basting stitch in at my fold line of my hem, which I have not done yet, but just go all the way around. This worked great for any curve you're trying to hem, and so just put a basting stitch in there, and then that's where you're going to fold it, and then you will just slightly stretch the main skirt as you sew, and that basting stitch will keep it in place, and then it'll give you a really nice crisp hem once it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and hem this up using that method, and then I will be back. All right, so you can see here I have it all hemmed, and I serged it, and then you can kind of see my basting stitches in there, and then I did it with a triple zigzag stitch. And if you wanted to try this hemming method, I did make a short tutorial on my Instagram, and I will put that link to that video in the description if you wanted to check that out. But once we have this, we are almost done. I'm going to now fold my skirt back in half along my seam line here and just kind of get that matched up. And then I'm going to take my bodice, again, it is right side out at this point, and first I'm going to start by taking my side seam of my bodice and matching it up to one of the side seams of my skirt. It doesn't matter which one. The one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and I usually do for the cuffs and even for the circle skirt, if you are using a printed fabric that is directional, meaning your print is all going one way, just be careful when you're cutting out your skirt. A circle skirt, it is a little bit harder because your shapes will go a little bit diagonal, but your cuffs and everything, when you're putting those in, make sure that when it comes out, your print is going the same way as the print on your sleeve. Just something to note. But then I'm just going to line up this seam over here. And then we'll just continue matching all of our layers up all the way around our waistline. And then once those are all pinned in place. This should fit about perfectly. You might have to ease it into place, and you just want to make sure that, one, I would check that your lining and your bodice ended up at the same length. Sometimes they can just end up like one a little bit longer, like something like that, and you just want to trim it and make sure that it's all the same length to make it easier to sew. But then just line up those raw edges right there, and then take this over to your machine and just sew all the way around that waistline, and then your dress is done. All right, so once you sew your skirt onto your bodice, you are done, unless you decided to wait till the end to hem. Then after you hem, you would then be done. But I don't have the dress right now because my daughter took it right away and wanted to wear it. So I will pop up a picture or video of her in it. It turned out so cute. The only thing I would change, which it's nothing with the pattern, but the sleeves did not have as much stretch as I kind of anticipated. So I probably would size up in the sleeves, like maybe 2 sizes to accommodate for the lack of stretch. So if you were doing a gathered sleeve and the fabric was not stretchy, I would recommend sizing up. But I would only recommend that if you were doing the gathered sleeve. I wouldn't recommend using a fabric that has little to no stretch for the long sleeve or the short sleeve, because those do fit a little bit tighter and do need that stretch in there. So that's just one thing to note. But other than that, I hope that this video was really helpful. And if you have any other questions, feel free to leave a comment, or you can check me out on Instagram. It's @SewBex, and you can always reach out to me there with any other questions you have. And I will put a link to my Instagram in the description, as well as a link to the pattern and the other tutorials that I have on this pattern. So thanks for watching. Bye.